Hi, good morning. I'm Alister Benn and you're watching the Zen Haggis. In this week's video, I want to talk about the concept of dissolving the box. This imaginary box, we talk about in terms of creativity, thinking outside the box, and that seems to be like this utopian thing, is thinking outside of the box. But we don't talk about what the box is. So that's the purpose of today's video, is to explore not just what this box is that we hypothetically talk about all the time, but how to not just think outside it, but how to dissolve it altogether. Now, I'm not referring to the box that we work in, like an office cubicle or an office space or a home office or in a factory or in a store or whatever it is we care to do for our living. I'm talking about this imaginary box that's in our head. Now, a lot of that box, if we want to think outside of it, first of all, we have to understand what it is. And for me, the concept of thinking outside the box seems very perverse, because it's, why should there be a box in the first place? Now, we live on the west coast of Scotland. It's a beautiful place to do so. And it's quite common for us to go out and see holidaymakers and tourists and occasionally other photographers coming here to enjoy the countryside. And I think it's a fairly well understood thing that the countryside is a good place to come and relax and enjoy the outdoors and to feel free and unconstrained. There's a few midges out here this morning. That's what we're enjoying. Now, is there a relationship between being in the countryside and being relaxed? Or are we bringing just a different version of ourselves into the countryside than the one that lives in an office in the city? If it was the countryside that was the variable, then everyone who lives in the countryside would be chilled. But that's not the case. I know for a fact where we are in the Highlands of Scotland, anxiety, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, domestic abuse, child abuse, all of these things exist here just as much as they do in the cities, even on a per capita basis. So the fact that everyone who lives in the countryside isn't chilled all the time, we can't just say, well, living in the countryside is good for you. There are definite benefits, but I know from my own past experience, I've been miserable living in the countryside and I've been miserable living in cities. So it seems to me that it's something else. It's not the location that's the variable, it's us that's the variable. The sun's just about to come spilling over the ridge here, so I'm going to get bathed in golden light as the midges eat me. So it's a changing situation. The thing I'm most interested in is understanding where this box comes from. Now, I think all of us are familiar with the idiot who lives in our head that tells us that we're no good at things, that tells us that we can't do things, that tells us that we're rubbish and we shouldn't even bother trying. And I think that defining language, I think this person who knows us best, knows our insecurities the best, knows our fears the best, they're not our best advisor. And I think, unfortunately, the box that we refer to is self-made. I don't want to belittle or make insignificant the impact that other people can have on producing that box. I know from my own personal experience and close family and friends how significantly other people's lives have been changed by the behaviour of other people. Partners, parents, grandparents, children even. We all have relationships with other people, and other people can impact our behaviour and the way we perceive ourselves. People can make you feel small, people can make you feel insignificant, people can make it feel as if what you say isn't valid. But at the end of the day, as we grow up and mature, part of growth, part of growing up, is this realization that we have a certain element of control over our own being. And certainly the one thing we have the most control over, or need to have the most control over, is this. It's the idiot inside our heads who's telling us stuff that is not good for us. Now, this box that we're supposed to be living in, if it's completely hypothetical, then we can change it at any point in time. We're not talking about a fixed space. If you want to move house, you have to sell one and move to another. If we want to change the relationship with the idiot in our head, All we need to do is change the language or how much we care what the idiot in our head is saying. So very much today we're going to be talking about how to get rid of the stupid idiot in your head that doesn't really do very much good for you. Now, as I said before, there's nothing easier than being out here in the countryside and being free and feeling as if the world is infinite. And some of you may know already that I actually do a formal meditation practice, and I've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. And whether I'm traveling or I'm at home, I have a space, I have a cushion, and I sit on that for at least 20 minutes to half an hour every day. And even if I'm in my office, which is, like I said, it's a small box, sound insulated, there's cameras and lights and computers and guitars and printers, and there's technology everywhere, and it's a very small space and it feels terribly confined. And it doesn't matter if I'm sat there or I'm sat on a rock out here by the loch. The state of mind that I can generate in myself is exactly the same, where I'm pushing out my consciousness beyond the physical space that I'm in. So even if I'm in this little closed box that I live in or I work in, I can still push my thoughts out of the room into the rest of the house, out of the house into the garden, out of the garden into the village, out of the village into the forests and mountains and lochs around me, and up into the air, to the atmosphere, and out into, well, the cosmos, to make it sound a little bit cheesy. But at the end of the day, pushing out my consciousness so that my world is infinite frees up my mind. It releases any boundary on it. And it's the same when I'm sat trying to write an article or to write a book. An empty page seems like the most daunting thing in the world until you realize that you've got the infinity of your perspective to put into it. Now, the thing with this box that we have in our mind, this imaginary box, it's made up of beliefs, it's made up of prejudices, it's made up of experiences and education and opinions. Not very much of that is factual. An awful lot of it is just perceptual. And the thing about it is, though, is that we nail ourselves to a plank of wood with these thoughts, these definitions of who we are, what we can do, what we can't do, why we can't do it all, what other people think about us, external judgment, expectation, society's expectation. It's almost as if our entire existence is defined by what everybody else thinks about us and what this idiot in our head has been telling us for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years. It doesn't matter how many years you've been living. The box that we try to think outside of is a box of our own design. And I think really what I'm trying to suggest today in this video, it's not necessarily about sitting and meditating, although I would recommend everyone does that. But the concepts are that you have to do what we did last week, which is notice. And once you've noticed, wait a minute, why am I telling myself that? Why am I putting myself down? Why am I telling myself I can't do something when clearly I can, or I certainly want to try? And this is what dissolving the box is all about. And I think in future videos to come, we'll be covering some of these things more. The way we label, the way we put ourselves down, negative language. All of these concepts are very, very important in... I'll just tell you a little anecdote before we close here. You know, I used to define myself as a fearful person, a panicky person, an anxious person, and a depressed person. And I got to the point where I was waiting to die. I just thought, that's it, this is me for the rest of my life, this is who I am, I'm anxious, I have panic attacks, and that's it. And it's over 3 years now since I've had a panic attack. In fact, it's longer than that. I certainly don't define myself as anxious anymore. I don't define myself as a fearful person anymore. I'm quite happy to just say, right, I'm Alister Benn, I'm bloody proud of what I do and how I go about my life, and every day is precious. So no more waiting for some miracle to happen that's going to change our lives for us. It's all about changing that relationship with the person in our head. Now, I've spoken a couple of times about meditating, and I know that there's a lot of people who are resistant to it. They find that they have a very busy mind. They don't consider they have the time to do it. And so for people who don't want to meditate, the exercise that you have to look at in how to deal with your box is noticing. Now, we talked about it last week, noticing when there was things in life that weren't making you happy and that they were things that you could consider to change. Now, isn't it ironic that we're in the same place, which is we need to notice when we're creating a box for ourselves. Now, this box is, like I said, it's a function of our thoughts and our perceptions and things that other people are saying to us and stuff we read on the internet. All of these things define the box. So we need to notice. So it's like noticing when you're reading too much negative social media. We need to step away from that and do something more productive with our time. So if you're noticing that reading social media first thing in the morning puts you in a bad mood for the rest of the day, that box of social media being bad for you needs to be dissolved. If you notice that hanging out with certain people makes you feel bad about yourself, then maybe it's time to consider whether those people should be in your lives or not. And we do that with friends, and it's harder with family, of course, but you know, at the end of the day, we need to notice the things that are closing us in. It's so beautiful to feel free. It's so beautiful to feel detached from that voice in our head. Now, like I said, I do meditate on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and I have periods while I'm sat where I can have all of this chaos going on around me and it just washes over me. The classic metaphor is like sitting behind the waterfall, and the waterfall is all your thoughts and society and all of these different things piling down in front of you, and you're totally dry behind the waterfall. Now, I would strongly advocate people to try and meditate, even if it's just taking 5 minutes, like at the end of this video. Nice music, relaxing imagery, and just use that time to notice, oh, wait a minute, there's a stupid thought. That's me telling me that I should be looking for cats juggling on YouTube. Whatever it is that distracts us from our true purpose in life. So yeah, that one exercise of noticing, it worked for us last week, and it will work for us in terms of dissolving the box. I hope you find this stuff useful. If so, please, please, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Get into the comments below. I was so overjoyed with the comments we got last week. It was so encouraging, the first video, to get such engaging comments from everyone. So I really appreciate that. And it makes me believe that this content is valuable and you will find it useful. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. I will kilt my way around the west coast of Scotland for some more.